Hey friends, and welcome back to another Wellness Wednesday. You may be able to hear it in my voice, but I have been getting over a cold these last few days, and that is why there have not been very many videos from me this week. I think the last one was like 3 or 4 days ago. So I've just been kind of laying low, trying to get better. And I'm hoping that my voice will hold out through this video because I did not want to miss a Wellness Wednesday. It's been nearly a year and a half that I have consistently done Wellness Wednesdays every single Wednesday, have not missed a single one, and I don't want to start now. And I also had some stuff I wanted to share. So we'll see how my voice does throughout this. So basically what I want this video to be is just a recap and like a debrief after my 2 weeks using a continuous glucose monitor. A few weeks ago, I shared the video of me applying the continuous glucose monitor, and I went over all of my reasons for why I am trying one out, being that I'm not diabetic and all that. So if you're curious about all the reasoning behind it, definitely go check out that video. I also put out a what I eat in a day video showing my different glucose responses to the things I ate throughout the day. So I will put that up in the cards as well for you to check out if you're curious to see what a day looks like. But I just wanted to do kind of an overview of like what I've learned in this 2 weeks that I had the continuous glucose monitor. During those 2 weeks was Thanksgiving. And so I had a good almost week and a half where I was eating my regular diet. And so I got a really good baseline of what my blood sugar looks like on my regular diet. And then Thanksgiving came and I very purposely ate more carbs on Thanksgiving because I wanted to see what my blood glucose would do. And if you guys have watched me for a while, you know that I am not one that stays 100% strictly keto all of the time. I kind of have different criteria of foods that I am willing to allow in my diet on occasion, and it's not based on what's keto or not keto. It's more based on how my body responds to certain things. So my never foods are things like gluten and stuff containing like trans fats and different things like that. It's like those are just never foods. It's never a big enough celebration in order for me to want to eat those things. But I do fine with occasional meals where I have higher carbs. I eat in a certain way that makes me feel good, and typically most of the time that's keto foods and keeping my body in that state of ketosis. But I am not bound to that. That's never been my approach to the keto diet. I'm not one that thinks that across the board sugar is poison, and if I even eat a bite of sugar, it's poisoning my body. I don't think that. I think it's in the dose. The dose makes the poison. And for occasional meals, for me, having some higher carb and even having some sugar, I don't think is the end of the world. And I have chosen to partake in those things, for a long time. And if you have watched my videos for a while, you know that I talked about this last Thanksgiving and, talked about my different plans for how I was going to indulge over Thanksgiving. It's not cheating. It's not going off the rails. I don't do that because it's part of my plan. So if having a little bit extra carbs on a holiday is part of my plan, I'm not going off plan. But this is the first time that I ever wore a continuous glucose monitor on one of those on-plan indulgences. And I was just really curious to see. I knew that my blood sugar would go up higher than when I'm eating a low-carb diet. Obviously, when you eat sugar, your blood sugar is going to go up. But I did not know. I didn't know if it was going to go up to 300. I didn't know. I had no idea. So I will share my blood glucose for the whole Thanksgiving day and kind of give you an idea of what I ate. I didn't really track super strictly. I put in a couple of things when I, thought of it and had time, but I was just enjoying my day and I was just curious to see what the whole day would look like. So anyways, I have the baseline, about week and a half of what my blood sugar looked like, eating my baseline diet, and then what it looked like on Thanksgiving and then the few days after Thanksgiving. So first off, as far as my baseline diet goes, I did not have any huge revelations of things that I thought were fine, and then I saw that they were spiking my blood sugar. I wondered, if I would come across certain things that I was eating that I was thinking was just good and low carb and keeping me in a good place, and see a big spike. I did not see anything like that. Basically, the way that I eat in my baseline diet, my low carb, keto, normal diet, everything I think works for me. I didn't find anything glaring out that was like, a big red flag. I was very happy with all the individual foods that I eat on a regular basis, not changing anything as far as the types of food I eat on my baseline diet. So that is a really good thing. Like, I was really, really happy to see that. Unless I had worn the continuous glucose monitor, I wouldn't have known that all these different foods that I'm eating are pretty much okay for me. I mean, there could be tweaks here and there that might change things a little bit, but overall, like, I was really, really happy with my blood sugar response to the foods that I was eating. And it's just another confirmation that, my listening to my body over these past few years of, finding things that I felt good eating and things that I didn't feel good eating, having the data from the continuous glucose monitor just kind of confirmed a lot of that. Like, yeah, your body is responding well to these things, just like you have felt it was. So that was a positive thing. I was really happy to learn that. Another insight that it was interesting to see, like, as far as in the data, because it's something that I knew, but it's always interesting to just see it on, see the numbers right in front of you. And that is just how much activity and stress affected my blood sugar. So we know that exercise and any kind of physical exertion is going to raise your blood sugar. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky with, paying really close attention to your blood sugar, because we want to have this black and white idea about things like high blood sugar is bad, low blood sugar is, or, lower blood sugar is good, obviously not low, because it has to be balanced. But, it's like anything, we want to be able to say anything that raises your blood sugar is bad. But exercise raises your blood sugar. And we know that exercise is not bad, obviously, unless you overdo it or overtrain or whatever. But in moderation, exercise is good. So it's one of those things where you can't just look at it as a black and white situation, because if we did that, we would say, well, we shouldn't exercise. I found that if I ate a meal and I just sat for 2 hours after that meal, my blood sugar was super, super even. No big spikes. If I ate a meal and then I got up and, was cleaning the basement with the kids or doing the laundry or moving around, my blood sugar went up. And, I can't look at it with a black and white lens saying, well, then I guess I just eat and sit all day long and then I'll have wonderful blood sugar. You have to use some discernment and try to look at, more of the overall picture rather than just that one, 2-hour period after a meal. And also, like what I talked about in my What I Eat in a Day video, I also noticed a very clear correlation between stress, even just normal stress, not like, terrible bad stress, just normal stress like driving to the airport raised my blood sugar. And that's just a reality that, I can't just not drive in order to keep my blood sugar lower. It's one of those other things where you just have to use some discernment. You have to kind of look at the overall picture and make the best decisions that you can with all of the information that you have. But it also encouraged me to think about like stress management techniques. Actually, the dietitian that I was corresponding with over the 2 weeks about my blood sugar from NutriSense, she recommended doing some sort of a stress relieving activity in the evening, whatever, that happens to be. I haven't implemented it yet. She gave me that idea and I just have not taken the time to do that. For me, it could be crocheting or praying or, something, doing yoga, stretching, whatever, just to release the stress in the evening. And it'd be interesting to see if adding in something like that would overall help my blood sugar responses to those times where I have stress. So those were the basic 3 things that I really noticed in my 2 weeks with the glucose monitor. Basically just that the foods that I'm eating pretty much I do well with on my baseline diet. Exercise does affect blood sugar, but we have to take it in a whole picture perspective. And then also that stress really is, it really does impact my blood sugar, and that some kind of a stress management strategy might be a beneficial thing for me. Okay, so now let me turn to the NutriSense app, and we'll go through some of the days of my baseline diet, and then I will show you the day before Thanksgiving, because that's the first time that I had a few extra carbs than normal, and then Thanksgiving, and we'll talk about that. And then after that, I will come back and talk about what I'm wanting to play with in the future, because NutriSense is sending me some more glucose monitors so I can continue to experiment and continue to share with you guys. And so I have some ideas of what I want to test and, play with and see what it does to my blood sugar. So here is November 20th, and that is the day that I did my What I Eat in a Day video. So if you guys saw that, you already saw this blood sugar response, but I wanted to show you down here in the analytics section, you can see what your average blood sugar is. So the mean is the average of all the values during the day. And my average was a blood sugar of 85, which I am super happy with that. And I found that on my baseline diet, basically my average was in the 80s. This is the 21st, it was 86. The 22nd, it was 88. And I found that when I ate my baseline diet, it typically stayed in the 80s. Now let's go to the day before Thanksgiving, which I had some sweet potatoes in the evening on the day before Thanksgiving because I was getting them ready for the next day, and I decided to go ahead and try them. I wanted to see just that one meal because I knew I was going to be eating more than just one thing on Thanksgiving. I just wanted to see what one meal did with adding in some Brussels sprouts and some sweet potatoes. So you can see that I had my very first spike over 120 on that day. And that is when I had the sweet potatoes, steak with roasted Brussels sprouts and sweet potato with butter. And pretty quickly it jumped up to 127 was the highest. But then within 2 hours, let's see, that was 4:15. Let's look here. So at 2 hours, it was still 106. So I got not a great score on my glucose score for that one because I was not back to baseline by the 2 hour mark. So that was interesting. I was happy to see that it didn't go above 140. That's when you start getting worried about diabetic response, as if your blood sugar is spiking above 140 when you have certain carbs or when you have any carbs. And so I was happy that, 127, it's not what I want to see often, but I was happy it wasn't higher. And then let's go over to Thanksgiving. So this is my blood sugar for Thanksgiving. I started my day off like normal with coffee with cream. And then I had some breakfast at 8:30 a.m. and that was athletic greens. I had some leftover beef short ribs and cottage cheese. And so that was a normal, low carb baseline diet breakfast. My blood sugar response to that was great. Started at 105, ended at 105. No worries there. And then this dot over here is when I started eating carbs. And the first thing I had was 3 of my teriyaki bacon wrapped dates that we have every year. And you can see I started at 103 blood sugar and jumped up to, what is the highest here? 131. So again, obviously not something I want to see often, but I was happy that it wasn't more, considering, I had 3 dates and then I had a couple more as I was cooking. So like I said, I didn't input every single thing in here that I ate. I just enjoyed the day. But you can see that it never spiked up again above that 131. That was the initial spike when I first started eating things with sugar in them. We had our Thanksgiving dinner right here, and I will throw in a picture of what my plate looked like. And I got a quick spike from that at 127, but it went down pretty quickly after that. And you can see my Thanksgiving dinner, I got a glucose score of 9. And that was because the peak was a little higher than we would like to see. But by 2 hours, I was down below baseline. Started at 108, ended at 100. So not terrible. And then I didn't put in over here when I had dessert, but I had a bowl of ice cream and a small pecan pie bar that was gluten-free. Like I said, I don't eat gluten, even on special occasions, but this one was gluten-free, and I had one of those, and then I had a bowl of ice cream. So significant amount of sugar, but I never spiked again from that. And that just shows me that once I introduce carbs back in, I get a spike, but then my body gets used to it. And that's pretty typical with a low carb diet, is if you've been low carb for a while, you can get some insulin resistance initially. So then when you do have carbs, you get a bigger spike than you would have if you'd been regularly eating carbs, but that it goes away pretty fast. And for me, I found that it did go away pretty fast. And so by the time we got to dessert, just the next day after I had a few extra carbs than normal, my blood sugar handled it really well. So I'm not exactly sure what time in here I had the dessert, but you can see there wasn't a huge spike from it. And then by 9 p.m., my blood sugar was back to, in the lower range where it normally is. I did notice that my average blood sugar, so my average blood sugar on Thanksgiving was 99, so a lot higher than baseline. And I noticed that my average blood sugar for the next few days, it took a while to get back into the 80s. And I don't think I actually saw it go back into the 80s because I finished my 2 weeks with the monitor. I had to take it off. And so it took me several days. And hopefully at this point now that I'm back to my baseline diet, I'm back there, but I don't have my monitor on anymore, so I can't know for sure. But that was interesting to see that having those indulgences on Thanksgiving affected my average blood sugar for the next several days. So I was actually very happy with my blood sugar response to the way I ate over Thanksgiving. Like I said, I did not know if it was going to spike up to 300. I really had no idea because I've never really tested myself on one of those indulgence days. I'm focusing on time with the family. So it was really nice to have the continuous glucose monitor on and collecting all of that data without me even having to think about it. I could still enjoy the day. And all in all, I was very happy with it. And it confirmed my being okay with having days like that occasionally, very occasionally. If I start eating like that every week, or even multiple times a month, it's going to be an issue for me. But having days like that very, very occasionally, I personally am fine with. And this is another one of those areas where you have to know yourself and you have to know your own personal responses. And you have to use that information in order to make decisions for yourself. So if I had gone through Thanksgiving the way I did and I saw my blood sugar spike up to 300, that would have changed my decision making in the future. So when I say it's okay for me and I'm okay with having the occasional indulgence, even in these terrible sugary foods, I'm okay with that. I am absolutely not saying that I'm okay with you doing that. I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm not saying that you're wrong for whatever choice that you make. And I hope that gives you an example of if my body had responded differently, I think a different choice moving forward would be the right choice for me. So that's why I am so much more for knowing your own body and knowing your own responses to specific foods and specific ways of eating, rather than trying to come up with like a yes and no food list that, applies to everyone. A yes and no food list is way easier if you're like trying to sell a diet, trying to help individual people figure out what works for them and what doesn't work for them is a whole lot harder. So I completely understand the desire to, just start with a framework of yes food, no food, keto food, not keto food. But for me, as someone who has been doing this for a really long time and has spent a lot of time and energy learning about my own body and about what works for me and what doesn't, it's like it gives me more freedom to make my own yes and no food list, or yes, no, and sometimes food list. So that was my Thanksgiving as far as my blood sugar goes. Again, very happy with it. So like I said, NutriSense is sending me some more glucose, continuous glucose monitors so I can continue to share my experience with you guys. And like I said, there wasn't specific foods that I found that I had major issue with. As long as I'm eating my baseline, regular, low-carb, keto-ish diet, I do pretty good. But what I am interested in experimenting a little bit more with is the lifestyle things and the things beyond food that affect blood sugar. So like I showed you on the app, you can see your average blood sugar for the day. And I think that's going to be really helpful when I start playing with adding in some more exercise. I have not done a lot of exercise in the past few months. Part of the reason for that is because I have been dealing with the iron deficiency, and just trying to have the motivation and energy to do that has been difficult. But now that I have, at least my iron in a good place for now from the infusion, I want to start adding in a little more exercise, and I want to do an experiment to see what it does to my average blood sugar. I know that adding in exercise is going to add some spikes, hopefully not crazy high spikes, but it will raise my blood sugar when I exercise. But I'm really curious to see overall for the whole day if it has an effect on that average. So you can look for an experiment of that coming soon. I also want to experiment with more about meal timing and grouping. So I have been not really tracking my food very much. I've kind of been just eating whenever I feel like. So it ends up being that I consume calories, 4 or 5 times a day sometimes, because I'll have my coffee in the morning, and then I have my athletic greens a couple hours later, and then I eat, and then sometimes I'll, eat a little bit of something, and then an hour later I'm like, oh, that wasn't quite enough as a meal. I just haven't been diligent about making my meal times consistent. And I'm curious to see what doing that would do to my blood sugar. So instead of waking up and having my coffee and then just kind of waiting and seeing how I feel, waking up and having a meal and having my coffee with it, just trying to be more intentional about just having 3 meals a day. Curious, just to see if that makes any difference in my blood sugar at all. So those are the couple things that I'm thinking about playing with and seeing what effect they have. If there's anything else that you specifically are curious about as far as blood sugar response, let me know. I might throw that into my experiment schedule as well. But I think I'm going to leave this video here. I know it was already very long. I hope you found some value in it. If you are interested in checking out NutriSense, go down to the link below and you can find all the information there. You can sign up with your email address for more info. And I do get a little bit of a kickback anytime someone just signs up for more information with their email address. You don't even have to make a purchase. Just signing up with your email address, I get a little bit of a kickback. It helps support the channel. And so I appreciate all of you guys who have already done that. And if you're curious about NutriSense, definitely go that direction and check it out. So that's my Wellness Wednesday today. I hope you guys are all doing great, and I will see you again in the next video.